Have you ever imagined waking up in a completely different world? Well, that's exactly what happened to me. My name is Sophia, and until yesterday, I was just an ordinary 28-year-old teacher, living my quiet life in a small apartment, grading papers, and dreaming of adventure. But today I woke up in the body of a romance novel villain. And not just any villain, guys. I'm the cruel stepmother of the most adorable triplets that ever existed. Married to the most powerful and cold CEO in all of Korea. Let me explain this whole madness better, because honestly, if someone told me this story, I wouldn't believe it either. I was reading my favorite webtoon before going to sleep. You know those Korean romance stories that make us sigh and stay up way too late? The title was The CEO's Frozen Heart, and I was completely obsessed with it. I had been following it for months, getting emotionally invested in every character except one. The evil stepmother, Sophia Chen, a woman so cruel and heartless that readers like me would leave angry comments begging the author to give her the worst possible ending. I was at chapter 127, the pivotal chapter where the evil stepmother was finally going to be caught mistreating the triplets. I remember being so angry at her actions that I actually threw my phone on the bed and said out loud, I wish I could be there to protect those poor babies myself. And then, exhausted from a long day of teaching rowdy teenagers, I fell asleep with those words echoing in my mind. When I woke up, everything felt wrong. The bed was too soft, too big, too luxurious. The sheets felt like silk against my skin, instead of my usual cotton ones from the discount store. The room smelled like expensive perfume and fresh flowers, not the faint scent of coffee and textbooks that usually filled my tiny apartment. I sat up slowly, my head spinning with confusion, and that's when I saw it. The massive floor-to-ceiling mirror across from the bed. The reflection staring back at me wasn't mine. Instead of my shoulder-length brown hair that never cooperated, no matter how much I tried to style it, I saw perfectly styled platinum blonde hair that cascaded in elegant waves. Instead of my plain face, with freckles and the scar on my chin from falling off my bike as a kid, I saw porcelain skin so flawless. It looked airbrushed. I was wearing a silk nightgown that probably cost more than my monthly salary. And when I looked down at my hands, I saw perfectly manicured nails with French tips. But the real shock came when I looked closer at that face in the mirror. The sharp cheekbones, the cold blue eyes, the perfectly shaped lips that seemed made for cruel words. I was looking at Sophia Chen, the character I despised more than any fictional villain ever created. My heart started pounding so hard, I thought it might burst out of my chest. This had to be a dream, right? People don't just wake up in fictional worlds, inhabiting the bodies of characters they hate. But when I pinched myself, and trust me, I pinched hard enough to leave a bruise, the pain was real. When I ran to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face, the water was real. When I looked at the calendar on the bedside table, my blood turned to ice. It was March 15th, exactly the date when everything would go wrong in the story. And, guys, let me tell you exactly why this date was so terrifying. In the original webtoon, March 15th was the day that changed everything. It was the day the CEO, Kang Hyun-woo, would come home early from a business trip to surprise his sons on their 4th birthday. Instead of a happy family celebration, he would walk in to find his wife locked the children in the basement as punishment for accidentally breaking one of her precious vases. The scene was so heartbreaking that readers were in tears. The children were found hungry, scared, and traumatized. And that was the final straw that led to Sophia's immediate divorce and banishment from the family. I had maybe 6 hours before Hyunwoo's flight would land. 6 hours to completely change the trajectory of this story. to save 3 innocent children from trauma, and to somehow convince the most powerful man in Korea that his wife had suddenly become a completely different person? No pressure at all, right? Comment below. Guys, have you ever been in a situation where you had to think fast to save someone you care about? Because I was about to face the biggest challenge of my life, and I needed all the courage I could get. I threw on the first clothes I could find, and even the casual wear in this closet was designer everything, and ran straight to the children's wing of the mansion. Yes, this house was so big it had wings. The triplets had their own entire section, with bedrooms, a playroom, a study area, and even their own small kitchen. But as I got closer, I could hear something that made my heart shatter into a million pieces, crying, soft, muffled sobs coming from behind a locked door. I found the key hanging on a hook nearby. Apparently, the original Sophia made a habit of locking the children away, and my hands were shaking so badly I could barely get it into the lock. When the door finally opened, what I saw made me understand why readers hated this character so much. The room was barely bigger than a closet, with no windows and only a single dim light bulb hanging from the ceiling. There were no toys, no books, no comfort items of any kind. Just 3 small figures huddled together on a thin mattress on the floor. The triplets were wearing clothes that were too small. Their hair was messy and unwashed, and their faces were streaked with tears and dirt. Jihoon, the oldest by just a few minutes, was in the middle with his arms wrapped protectively around his younger brothers. Minho was trying so hard to be brave, but I could see his little body trembling, and Subin, the baby of the 3, was clutching a torn piece of fabric that might have once been a stuffed animal. When they saw me in the doorway, their reaction broke my heart all over again. They didn't run to me like children should run to their mother. Instead, they pressed themselves further into the corner, their eyes wide with terror. Jihoon actually moved in front of his brothers, as if preparing to take whatever punishment was coming for all of them. "Please," he whispered, his voice so small and scared. "We're sorry about the vase. We didn't mean to break it. Please don't hurt Minho and Subin. I'll take all the punishment. Just don't hurt them." Guys, I literally started crying right there. This 4-year-old baby was trying to protect his brothers from their own stepmother. How could anyone look at these precious angels and choose cruelty over love? I got down on my knees so I wouldn't tower over them, and I made my voice as soft and gentle as possible. "Sweet boys, I am so sorry. You're not in trouble. Nobody is going to hurt you, and you're never going to be locked in this terrible room again. I promise." They looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Subin peeked out from behind Jihoon's shoulder, his huge brown eyes still full of tears. "You're not angry about the vase?" "Oh, sweetheart, no. Accidents happen. Vases can be replaced, but little boys like you are precious beyond measure. Come here. Let me see if you're hurt." It took almost 20 minutes of gentle coaxing before they were willing to let me approach them. 20 minutes of sitting on that cold floor, speaking in soothing tones, showing them my empty hands to prove I wasn't hiding anything to hurt them with. When Subin finally took a tiny step toward me, it felt like the greatest victory of my life. But that was just the beginning. When I really looked at them up close, I discovered the extent of their stepmother's cruelty. They were all underweight, their clothes were dirty and ill-fitting, and they had small bruises on their arms that made my blood boil with rage. How dare someone hurt these innocent babies? How dare anyone make them live in fear? "How long has it been since you had a proper meal?" I asked gently. And the way they looked at each other before answering told me everything I needed to know. We had bread yesterday, Minho whispered. And some water. Bread and water. For growing 4-year-olds. I wanted to find the original Sophia and, well, let's just say I was grateful she was gone, and I was here instead. Well, that's about to change right now. What do you say we go to the kitchen and make the biggest, most delicious breakfast ever? With pancakes and eggs and fresh fruit and chocolate milk and anything else your hearts desire. The hope that slowly dawned on their faces was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. But they were still cautious, still expecting this kindness to be some kind of trick. Are you really not going to hurt us? Jihoon asked, and the question contained so much pain and confusion that I had to fight back more tears. Never again, I promised, holding out my hands to them. From now on, you 3 are going to be loved and cherished and protected every single day. That's what little boys deserve. What happened next, guys, was pure magic. One by one, these traumatized children took my hands and let me lead them out of that horrible room. We walked through the mansion together, and I could see them looking around with wonder at their own home, as if they were seeing it for the first time. And maybe they were. Maybe they had been locked away so often that they never got to appreciate the beautiful place where they lived. The kitchen was like something out of a magazine. Marble countertops, professional-grade appliances, a pantry stocked with every ingredient imaginable. But what struck me most was how the household staff reacted when they saw us coming. Mrs. Kim, the head cook, literally dropped the dish she was washing when she saw me walking into the kitchen, holding the children's hands. The other staff members stopped what they were doing and stared at us like we were some kind of impossible sight. Mrs. Sophia, Mrs. Kim's voice was barely above a whisper. The children, are they allowed to be in the kitchen? That question told me everything I needed to know about how this household had been run. These poor staff members had been forced to watch 3 little boys be mistreated, probably wanting to help, but afraid of losing their jobs if they interfered. Mrs. Kim, I said with the biggest smile I could manage. From now on, these children are welcome everywhere in this house. This is their home, and they should feel safe and loved in every room. In fact, I want you to prepare the most amazing breakfast possible for them. What do you say, boys? What sounds good? The transformation that happened next was incredible to watch, as Mrs. Kim and the other staff members realized I was serious. Genuine smiles started appearing on their faces. It turns out they had been heartbroken about the children's treatment too, but had felt powerless to change anything. I make excellent pancakes, Mrs. Kim said, her eyes twinkling with excitement, with blueberries and whipped cream. And I have fresh strawberries that would be perfect. Can we really have all of that? Subin asked, his voice full of wonder. You can have anything you want, sweetheart. You're growing boys, and you need good food to be strong and healthy. While Mrs. Kim and her team got to work preparing what looked like a feast, I sat with the triplets at the kitchen island. Slowly, gradually, they began to relax. I learned that Jihoon loved dinosaurs, but had never owned a dinosaur book. Minho was fascinated by cooking and wanted to help make the pancakes. Subin loved to draw, but had never had crayons of his own. Each little revelation broke my heart a little more, but also filled me with determination. These children had been denied so many simple joys that every kid should experience. I was going to make sure they got all of it and more. The breakfast that Mrs. Kim prepared was absolutely magnificent. Fluffy pancakes stacked high with berries and cream, scrambled eggs that looked like clouds, fresh fruit cut into fun shapes, and tall glasses of chocolate milk with whipped cream on top. The boys' eyes went so wide when they saw it all that I thought they might fall out of their heads. But here's what really got to me, guys. When I told them to dig in and enjoy, They looked at each other uncertainly, then carefully took the smallest possible bites, as if they were afraid the food would disappear if they enjoyed it too much. They had been conditioned to expect disappointment, to never fully relax into happiness, because it might be taken away at any moment. Eat as much as you want, I encourage them. There's plenty for everyone, and you can have seconds and thirds if you're still hungry. Watching them slowly realize that this abundance was real, that they were allowed to enjoy it, was like watching flowers bloom in fast motion. Their little faces lit up with pure joy as they tasted flavors they had probably been denied for months. They giggled when whipped cream got on their noses. They compared who had the biggest strawberry. They started talking excitedly about their favorite parts of the meal. For maybe 30 minutes, I actually forgot about the impending disaster. I was so caught up in their happiness, so amazed by how quickly they were bouncing back from trauma. When shown just a little kindness, these were resilient, wonderful children who deserved every good thing the world had to offer. But then I heard it, the sound that made my blood run cold and brought reality crashing back down around me. A car door slamming in the driveway. I checked the clock on the kitchen wall and my heart stopped. It was only 10:30 a.m. Hyunwoo's flight wasn't supposed to land until 2 p.m., which meant he wouldn't be home until at least 3. But that was definitely his car. I could hear the distinctive sound of the expensive engine, the automatic locks engaging, the confident footsteps heading toward the front door. The triplets heard it too, and the change in them was immediate and heartbreaking. The smiles disappeared from their faces, their little bodies tensed up, and they started to push their plates away, as if they had been caught doing something wrong. "It's okay," I whispered quickly, reaching out to squeeze their hands. "You're not in trouble. Keep eating your breakfast. Everything is going to be fine." But even as I said the words, I wasn't sure I believed them. In the original story, Hyunwoo's early arrival was what led to the discovery of the children's abuse. He was supposed to find them locked in that basement room, traumatized and hungry. Instead, he was going to find them in the kitchen, happy and well-fed, being treated with kindness by the wife he had every reason to despise. Would he believe this change was real? Would he think it was some kind of manipulation or trick? Would he trust that his children were finally safe? Or would he assume I was just putting on an act because I knew he was coming home? Tell me in the comments, guys. What would you think if you were in his position? If someone who had been cruel to your children for months suddenly seemed completely different, would you believe they had really changed? Or would you be suspicious? The front door opened with its usual authoritative sound, and I could hear Hyunwoo's voice as he spoke to someone on the phone. His tone was all business, cold and efficient, the voice of a man who commanded empires and never showed weakness. But I knew that somewhere underneath that icy exterior was a father who loved his children desperately and felt helpless to protect them in his own home. His footsteps echoed through the marble hallway, getting closer to the kitchen. The triplets were practically vibrating with nervous energy, torn between the new happiness they had found with me and the old fear of what might happen when their father discovered them outside of their usual punishment routine. "Remember," I whispered to them, "you haven't done anything wrong. You're just having breakfast like normal children should every single day." And then he appeared in the kitchen doorway. And guys, let me tell you, seeing Kang Hyunwoo in person was like being struck by lightning. The webtoon illustrations had captured his basic features, but they couldn't convey the sheer presence of this man. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit that probably cost as more than most people's cars. His hair was styled immaculately, despite the early morning flight, and his face could have been carved from marble by a master sculptor. But it was his eyes that really got to me. Dark and intelligent and completely unreadable, they held the kind of power that could make grown men tremble with just a glance. These were the eyes of someone who had built an empire from nothing, who had learned to trust no one and show no weakness. And right now, those eyes were taking in the scene, before him, with the sharp focus of a predator, analyzing potential threats. The silence in the kitchen was so complete, you could have heard a pin drop. Hyunwoo's gaze moved slowly from me to the children, to the elaborate breakfast spread on the counter, and I could practically see his mind working to process this completely unexpected scenario. Mrs. Kim and the other staff members had gone completely still, probably wondering if they were about to witness another explosive confrontation between the master and mistress of the house. The triplets were frozen in their chairs, their half-eaten pancakes forgotten as they waited to see what would happen next. "What is this?" Hyunwoo's voice was low and controlled, but I could hear the confusion underneath the calm exterior. Before I could answer, something absolutely magical happened. Little Subin, bless his innocent heart, slipped down from his chair and ran straight to his father. In the original story, the children were terrified of Hyunwoo because they associated his presence with increased punishment from their stepmother. They had learned to make themselves invisible whenever he was around, to never approach him or ask for his attention. But this Subin, this little boy who had just experienced kindness for the first time in months, had no such fear. He wrapped his tiny arms around his father's legs and looked up at him with a face full of pure joy. "Daddy, you're home early. Mommy Sophia made us the most amazing breakfast. Look, we have pancakes with blueberries, and whipped cream and strawberries cut like stars. And Mrs. Kim made them extra fluffy just for us." The expression on Hyunwoo's face was absolutely priceless, complete and utter shock, as if his son had just started speaking in ancient Greek. His eyes went wide, his mouth fell slightly open, and for a moment, the powerful CEO looked like nothing more than a confused father, trying to understand what was happening to his family. "She made you breakfast," he repeated slowly, as if testing the words to make sure he had heard them correctly. "The best breakfast ever," Minho chimed in, bouncing excitedly in his chair. "And she said we can have seconds if we want. And she held our hands. And she said we're never going to be locked in the scary room again. And she said she's sorry for being mean before. And she promised to take care of us, forever and ever," Jihoon added, his natural protectiveness of his brothers extending now to defending me. I watched Hyunwoo's face carefully as he processed this information. The man was clearly struggling with what he was seeing and hearing. Years of anger and resentment toward his wife were warring with the evidence right in front of him. His children, who had been withdrawn and fearful for so long, were animated and happy, and actually seeking physical affection from the woman who had tormented them. His eyes met mine across the kitchen, and the intensity of that gaze made me feel like he was looking straight into my soul. I could see the questions there, the suspicion, the desperate hope that he was afraid to acknowledge. This was a man who had been hurt and disappointed so many times that trust was a luxury he couldn't afford, especially when his children's welfare was at stake. "Boys," he said finally, his voice carefully neutral, "finish your breakfast, and then go play in your room for a while. I need to speak with Sophia privately." The happiness immediately drained from their faces. They thought they were in trouble, that this wonderful morning was about to come crashing down around them. Subin's bottom lip started to tremble, and Minho grabbed my hand tightly, as if afraid I might disappear. "Hey, sweethearts," I said quickly, giving them the most reassuring smile I could manage. Your daddy just wants to talk to me about grown-up things. It's nothing bad, I promise. Why don't you go to your playroom, and I'll come find you in a little bit. Maybe we can read some stories together, or draw some pictures, or build something amazing with blocks. The mention of activities they had probably never been allowed to do freely seemed to perk them up a little. They nodded hesitantly and started to leave, but not before each one gave me a quick hug that nearly brought me to tears all over again. These children who had been afraid of physical contact just hours ago were now seeking comfort from me voluntarily. Once we were alone, Hyunwoo stepped further into the kitchen, and I was struck again by his sheer physical presence. Up close, I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the fine lines of stress around his mouth, the weight of responsibility that sat on those broad shoulders. This wasn't just a cold, ruthless CEO. This was a father who had been fighting a losing battle to protect his children while building and maintaining a business empire. What game are you playing, Sophia? His voice was dangerously quiet, with an undertone of barely controlled fury. What do you want? No game, I replied, meeting his gaze as steadily as I could manage. I know you have absolutely no reason to believe me, but I want to be a real mother to those children. They deserve love and security and happiness, not fear and punishment. He laughed, but there was no humor in it whatsoever. It was the bitter laugh of someone who had been betrayed too many times to count. Love? You? The woman who locked my sons in a basement for breaking a vase. The woman who threw away their comfort toys because you said they were making too much noise. The woman who made them eat table scraps while you dined on gourmet meals. Each accusation hit me like a physical blow to the chest. The original Sophia's crimes were even worse than what had been shown in the webtoon. The full extent of her cruelty was almost too horrible to contemplate. I can't undo what I did before, I said, my voice shaking with genuine emotion. I can't take back the pain I caused them, and I know that saying sorry isn't nearly enough, but I can promise you that from this moment forward, those children will know only love and kindness and protection from me. I swear it on everything I hold dear. Something flickered in his dark eyes. Surprise maybe, or the faintest glimmer of hope that he was trying desperately to suppress. People don't change overnight, Sophia, especially not people like you. So what's your angle? What do you really want from me? Money? A better divorce settlement? Some kind of leverage you think this performance will give you? The pain in his voice was unmistakable. This man had been hurt so deeply by the woman whose body I now inhabited that he couldn't even conceive of genuine change or redemption. He had learned to assume the worst of everyone, especially her, because hope had been used as a weapon against him too many times. I want those children to have the childhood they deserve, I said simply. I want Jihoon to stop feeling like he has to protect everyone all the time and just be a little boy. I want Minho to be able to explore his love of cooking without fear of punishment. I want Subin to have all the crayons and paper he could ever want so he can create beautiful art. I want them to feel safe and loved every single day for the rest of their lives. The silence that followed was so thick with tension, I could almost taste it. Hyunwoo was studying my face with the intensity of someone trying to solve an impossible puzzle, looking for cracks in my facade, for signs of deception or manipulation. And what about me? He asked finally. What do you want from me in this fantasy scenario where you've suddenly become Mother of the Year? The question caught me off guard because in that moment, looking at this broken, guarded man who loved his children so fiercely, I realized I wanted something I had no right to want. I wanted to heal his wounded heart the same way I was trying to heal his son's. I wanted to show him that not everyone would betray his trust, that love didn't have to be a battlefield, that his family could be a source of strength instead of pain. But I couldn't say any of that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I want you to give me a chance to prove that this change is real, I said instead. Not for my sake, but for theirs. Those little boys in there have already started healing. In just one morning, they've remembered how to smile and laugh and hope. If you give us time, give our family time. Imagine what could happen in a week, a month, a year. Our family. The words seemed to surprise him, as much as they surprised me. Daddy, Jihoon's small voice interrupted from the doorway before I could answer. He was peeking around the corner, clearly worried despite my reassurances. Are you mad at Mommy Sophia? Please don't be mad. She was really nice to us today. She made us feel safe. And that, guys, was the moment when everything shifted. This powerful, untouchable man, who commanded respect and fear from everyone around him, looked at his brave little son, his baby boy, who was actually defending the woman who had caused him so much pain, and his carefully constructed walls began to crack. I could see the internal war playing out on his face, the desire to protect his children, warring with years of justified anger, the hope that things could really change, battling against the fear of being disappointed again, the love he felt for his sons, coming up against the hatred he felt for his wife. I'm not mad, Jihoon, he said softly, and his voice was gentler than I had ever heard it. Go back to your brothers. Everything is going to be okay. The little boy nodded and disappeared again. But his brief appearance had accomplished something that all my words couldn't. He had shown his father that the children were already bonding with me, already seeing me as a source of comfort and protection instead of fear. When we were alone again, Hyunwoo ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up for the first time since I had known him. He suddenly looked younger, more vulnerable, less like an untouchable CEO, and more like a tired father who just wanted his family to be whole. If this is some kind of act, he said quietly, if you hurt them again after giving them hope, I will destroy you. Not financially, not legally. I will destroy your very existence. Do you understand me? The threat should have been terrifying, but instead it made my heart warm with hope. Because underneath the menace, I could hear something else. The possibility that he might actually be willing to believe in change, to give us the chance I was asking for. I understand, I said, and I promise you won't have to. Those children are going to be loved and cherished and protected every day for the rest of their lives. What happens next in this incredible journey, guys? Will Hyunwoo's frozen heart begin to thaw? Can our little family really heal from years of pain and betrayal? And what happens when the children's birthday celebration that was supposed to be ruined becomes the most magical day of their lives instead? Drop your predictions in the comments below. What do you think should happen next? How long do you think it will take for Hyunwoo to fully trust me? And what would you do if you were in my shoes, trying to prove that you've completely changed to someone who has every reason not to believe you? Make sure to like this video if you're loving this story of second chances and healing hearts. And don't forget to subscribe because the next part is going to be absolutely incredible. We're going to see the triplets' first real birthday party. And trust me when I say it's going to be the most heartwarming thing you've ever witnessed.